That's a thing. I have to say that considering how hyped up this movie was, I do have to identify with the minority of the fans that it didn't quite deliver what it was promised to us. I was receiving email notifications nearly once a week reminding me that I had to see Legend of Crimson when it came out, so I was seriously looking forward to what this movie had in store for me. However, by the time the movie was over, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about what I had seen. After sleeping on it for about a day or two, I finally had the answer that I was looking for. It wasn't Konosuba. Yes, they managed to stay fairly faithful to the characters and story we've come to love so much, but a lot of cameos paid great homage to the series as a whole, but a lot of this praise only comes in the first half of the movie. Once the main conflict starts, they abandon all the tried and true formulas of how the series works as a whole and focus on trying to make the final battle as epic and over the top as humanly possible. While that isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does bring a lot of its faults into painfully obvious light. That, and there were more than a few plot holes and inconsistencies with the lore that I couldn't help but take notice of. That being said, and I know this is going to need a lot of explanation considering certain issues with the film, I actually didn't dislike it as a whole. Considering I have quite a few thoughts and issues with the movie that span its entire runtime, I'm going to be running through these while going over a brief synopsis of the film because I couldn't think of another way to do this accurately. In case it wasn't obvious, I'm going to be blasting through key plot points and events that span not only the movie but the series as a whole, so in case it wasn't obvious, spoiler warning if you haven't seen or read either. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I don't know if this is how it started for you, but at least in my case, the movie didn't start right away, but rather it began with a sit-down interview with two of the voice actors from the main cast, Jun Fukushima, who is the voice of Kazuma, and Rie Takahashi, the voice of Megumin. Seeing as they were ostensibly the main character of the film, I can't see any complaints about this, but it's what they said that kind of stuck in my craw for the movie. Takahashi, for her part, kept things relatively agreeable all around. She mentioned that the sound design in particular was especially good, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt that they did not skimp on the budget there. Every single explosion resonated in the room so powerfully that I thought I was having heart palpitations all throughout the movie. Though with Megumin as a pivotal character, what else would you expect? She also said that the movie would really develop Megumin as a character by expanding on her backstory, her family, and her love of explosions in particular. Fukushima even mentioned that this movie was the first time where he'd ever found Megumin cute as a character. Again, I wholeheartedly agree with this, as I've been saying all along that Megumin should get more screen time. However, in regards to her explosion magic, I feel like they kind of dropped the ball there. The scene which she must be talking about didn't really explain much other than expanding on her relationship with Union than anything else, so that didn't really answer any questions we had. I thought that this meant that they were going to be adapting the spin-off series, that's where we really learn about Megumin's explosion magic and her history with that, and I thought that they were going to be doing that since the opening scenes really focus on Chomsuke a lot in the beginning, but nope, they teased her all throughout the first act and then ignored her for the rest of the movie. Going back to the interview, what I really found issue with was what Fukushima portrayed how Kazuma was going to be in the movie. Despite his many flaws, Kazuma did have plenty of redeemable moments in the series where he actually became likable as a character. So, I found it completely believable that he was capable of being sympathetic in this movie, like Fukushima claimed. However, what I ended up seeing in the film was anything but that. Yes, he still had some points where he was genuinely likable, namely in regard to his relationship with Megumin, but outside of the confines of that one circumstance, he acts like an entitled, self-important jerk who is at best objectifying every female character around him. I recognize that this isn't necessarily out of character for him, but the fact that the film just focuses entirely on that just draws attention to just how unlikable he is, and he overall regresses as a character because of that. Imagine if in this movie all that Megumin did was fire off explosions everywhere and act all tune-ish. I know that sometimes that is all she does, but if they never lingered on it for very long, Instead, they chose to expand on the pathos of her character and give her actual growth instead. Kazuma, on the other hand, is given no such grace, as the only times we're expected to feel sorry for them are both immediately preceded by his biggest jerk moments in the movie, and are already the most problematic scenes to begin with. He, as a character, is dealt a huge disservice by this film. While we're on the subject of characterization, I may as well address the rest of that cast too, particularly Aqua and Darkness. Considering how each member of the party is ostensibly supposed to be of equal importance to the story, it is a tad off-putting that they are both shoved to the side for the movie, but I have to say I can't entirely fault the movie for this. I recognize that this movie is essentially just Megumin's story, so it's only natural that the others would kind of get relegated to side character positions, but it still kind of fucks with the formula of Konosuba quite a bit. Darkness in particular was left out of the movie so significantly that it's impossible not to notice, but since Darkness is my least favorite character in the series already, I can't personally complain. In the pre-movie trivia, they mentioned how Darkness is the hardest character to write the script for, which does make sense when you consider her character, so this may have been a byproduct of that. They do attempt to make up for this by making her the inciting incident that led to the main conflict, and let her show her stuff in the final battle by showing she has the most combat potential in the whole group. Furthermore, most of her character flaws were kept to a bare minimum in this movie, possibly due to her lack of screen time, and aside from one outlier, they're all relatively inoffensive, so I'm willing to say her character got off okay in this movie. Aqua, on the other hand, is a little harder to justify. While she does accompany the cast more often than Darkness does, throughout the whole film, including the final conflict, she attributes absolutely nothing to the movie, save for one tiny little detail at the end. That's bullshit. I'm not arguing semantics here. While she is undoubtedly the comic relief character, often leaning into the useless goddess role given to her by the other characters, when push comes to shove, she always manages to contribute to the final conflict and is often the deciding factor in determining the victory. Does that sound anything like the brat we saw in this movie, doing absolutely nothing and even trying to weasel out of the final conflict, yet feeling entitled to such rich rewards regardless? Again, not entirely out of character for her, but without her pulling her weight this time, that's all we're left with this time. That being said, she is, however, the only one I notice who actually went out of character for any perceivable length of time. I'm referring, of course, to the part where she begins coddling Cosma after he's sexually assaulted by a group of orcs. I know that sounds weird out of context, but trust me, it makes a lot more sense in the movie. What does not make sense is that the real Aqua would have been laughing her ass off at Cosma being so traumatized about something that he's able to dish it out and not take. I can see why they changed this, but it's still way too far removed from what Aqua would do, as I don't believe she has a tender bone in her body to actually consider doing something like that. The one positive thing I can say to her character in the movie is related to the one thing she actually does do in the film. During this point, she has sort of a bonding moment with Kazuma where he calls her his most trusted partner. This scene, while wildly unearned, is still notable to me in that it's told without the slightest hints of romance in it. Speaking as a hopeless romantic when it comes to anime, I do like seeing how close these characters are while also showing just how little sexual chemistry they're supposed to have. Stuff like this is a refreshing change of pace compared to most harem-like stories, as legitimate platonic love between two members of the opposite sex is hair-pullingly rare, especially in anime, and I like how the movie was able to pay lip service to this at least. One last thing I want to talk about before I get to the review is that the characterization of Union, Megumin's rival, seems decidedly asymmetrical in this movie. For one thing, she got more screen time and character development than both Aqua and Darkness combined, which again is a bit unsettling considering she's not part of their party, but that does highlight the question of why she's not in their party in the first place, as she gets along with all of them well enough, and she seems to be more capable than all of them put together. In fact, in this movie alone, her ability seems to be crossing very well into Deus Ex Machina territory. More on that in the film review. However, I'm inclined to say that this film did a much bigger disservice to Union than either Aqua or Darkness. Yes, the two of them were mostly ignored in the movie, but it's still infinitely preferable to what they did to Union in that they gave her a false arc. What I mean by that is that they set up Union as a pivotal character, showed her struggling to fit in with her people, including her father, let her show off her chops in the final battle with all of her latent badassery coming out, and insert resolution here. She just vanishes from the story after the big boss is destroyed, and it's not made entirely clear exactly what happened to her and what, if anything, changed about her situation. I'm not saying that we needed some sort of last-minute exposition to show just how well off she ended up as that can break immersion just as easily as this does. But the problem is this could have so easily been resolved by having her join Cosmo's party for the picnic they had in the final scene, concluding the character arc they set up for her. Okay, this part is officially long enough as it is, so let's get started with the film review, okay? Remember that this movie covers events that took place in the 5th volume of the light novel, so everything in this movie is essentially canon to the Konosuba storyline. The opening scene is a good nod to the series as a whole, showing a giant toad eating a goat, and an explosion in the background, followed by the quest failed screen right off the bat, confirming without a shadow of a doubt that this is in fact the movie you came to see. Remember that the first half of the movie actually kept faithful to this series, so this shouldn't surprise anyone. Afterwards, we return to the guild where Kazuma and his party are reflecting on their most recent catastrophic failure caused by their colossal objective uselessness. They are interrupted by their pity party by Union, who suddenly shows up and demands to have Kazuma's baby. If you expected Kazuma to react to this with any semblance of reason, sanity, or tact, you're clearly in the wrong series. After taking Union back to their home, she then explains that she received a letter from her father stating that he is on the brink of death, their home village is under attack by the Devil King's forces led by one of his demon generals, and includes a prophecy that hers and Kazuma's child would one day grow up to slay the Devil King. Fortunately, Megumin quickly recognizes the prophecy as effectively being a prank by one of their former classmates, but determines that the first part of the letter is legitimate. That night, Union sets off for the Crimson Demon village to see what she can do to help, and Megumin convinces the rest of them to follow after her. They head to Wiz's magic shop to ask her to teleport them close to the village, but not before Vanir discusses the contract regarding Kazuma's intellectual properties from his life in Japan, which he is willing to buy for 300 million Eris. I was under the impression that they had already sealed that deal in the main series already, but based on what happens later, I imagine this was just to serve as exposition for the audience. Wiz then teleports the group to their destination, where they are immediately assaulted by a pack of orcs. Apparently in this world, orcs are a female-only species, as all males have long since gone extinct, resulting in them relentlessly pursuing males of other species and mating with them until they die. The revelation of this leaves Darkness in a crippling depression and deeply traumatizes Kazuma as he is almost sexually assaulted by the lot of them, saved only by the fortuitous arrival of Union, who scares off the pack with a bottomless swamp spell. This would have to be my second least favorite part of the film, mostly because Darkness basically gives up on life after learning this, highlighting why I dislike her as a character, but also because this is ostensibly the part where we're supposed to feel sorry for Kazuma, but after making a giant unequivocal ass of himself back in Axel, I was left with no feelings more than karmic catharsis. After they manage to collect themselves and Aqua decides to try out some random personality traits for no reason, they soon find the Devil King's army has appeared on top of them. They manage to hide for a while, but due to a combination of Megumin's childish teasing of Union and Kazuma's immediate return to assholery, they're found out pretty quickly. It's a wonder why I don't feel sorry for Kazuma here. Megumin manages to blow away most of them with her explosion magic, but she also gets the rest of them caught in the blast radius as well, and the Devil King's army quickly regroups with the arrival of even more reinforcements. Of course. Fortunately, the explosion also attracts the attention of the Crimson Demons, and they manage to wipe out the rest of them with a handful of reinforcements. Now here's where the first of the moments where Kazuma almost redeems himself shows up. When the Crimson Demons introduce themselves in the Chunish way they're established to be like, Kazuma steps forward and actually introduces himself in the exact same way, albeit with a dry indifference to what he's doing. Think about this. When he first met Megumin, Kazuma thought her Chunibyo tendencies were incredibly stupid because, well, they are. But the fact that he can now play along with the game, high levels of sarcasm notwithstanding, means he's at least willing to accept those parts of her character and even embrace them if the situation calls for that. If If that doesn't speak volumes to their relationship, I don't know what does. Anyway, the fact that an outsider was able to replicate the Crimson Demons' traditional greeting impresses them so well that they welcome the group into their village with open arms. They then meet with the chief, i.e. Union's father, who explains that the brink of death part of his letter was a standard greeting for written letters. The village is indeed under attack, but that's because the Crimson Demons themselves have been provoking the Devil King's army in the hope that their fantastical battles would soon become a tourist attraction for the village. I'm not joking, they literally use those words. After leaving Union to sort out her many family issues, the group then turned to Megumin's family issues as a misunderstanding with her little sister Kamiko leaves a bad impression of Kazuma with her parents. Conveniently, Megumin falls asleep immediately upon arriving, so Kazuma is left to defend himself on his own. Fortunately, due to Megumin's letters home, they knew he was at least important enough to her that they were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Now, had he stopped talking right there, this would be an amazing story. But dumbass continues on, says one more sentence, and turns it into a phenomenal story.
For whatever reason, Kazuma lets it slip that he's working out a business deal worth about 300 million, which, given how Megumin's family appears to be living in abject poverty, causes them to rather drastically change their tune around him. Yui, her mother, even goes as far as to magically roofie her husband and the rest of Kazuma's party and lock him and Megumin in a room together to force them together. I'm not joking, she literally does that. Now, to his credit, Kazuma does recognize that this is a very obvious trap and considers some more chivalrous solutions, but eventually gives up on that and succumbs to his usual shtick. Before he can do anything, however, Megumin wakes up at this moment and, while initially disgusted, she does buy Kazuma's explanation what had happened, presumably because she knows her own mother. She then gives him a chance to be a respectable human being in exchange for letting him sleep with her, and Kazuma, unsurprisingly and spectacularly, fails, leading Megumin to run out the window and spend the night with Union. Stay classy, kid. The next morning, Megumin takes the group, sans Darkness for whatever reason, presumably the scriptwriters' union, and shows them around the village, starting with her old academy, where she and Union show up in their old school uniforms. After Union gets browbeaten in equal measure by both her former classmates and Kazuma's party, Megumin then continues the tour where she shows off the key points of the village, including the local Chekhov's gun. Like, literally a gun. I go more into how this opens up a whole new can of worms in regard to the other characters' knowledge of our world, but frankly this interview is running long as it is. The tour is cut short by an alarm going off, and we see what Darkness has been getting up to while the rest of the group was away, which unfortunately turns out to be Darkness provoking attacks from the Devil King's army in the hopes of being sexually molested by them. I'm going to ignore this because this is consistent with her character, but we're still not making a case for her being likable by any stretch of the imagination. Fortunately for us, and unfortunately for her, none of them are even remotely interested in her, and indeed, even the general in charge of that area is a woman. Well, she appears to be, but I'll swing back to that one later. For now, I'll say that Sylvia managed to become far more sympathetic in this movie than any of the main cast. Not that there was much competition this time around, but I didn't expect to be feeling more for the villain than any of the main characters. Kazuma manages to defuse the situation by toting his party's accomplishments in order to intimidate the army. However, after Sylvia calls him on this, he then gives her Kyoya's name in an attempt to avoid retribution for this, something that Kazuma says he'll owe him a drink for later. While that is fair, I do have to mention that he and Kyoya are nowhere near close enough turns to be going out for any reason, though it is in character that Kazuma would try to pass on blame to him instead. Later that night, Yui, Megumin's mother, magically roofies her husband and the rest of Kazuma's party and locks him and Megumin in a room to force them together. Again, look, I know that Kazuma needs to redeem himself from last time, but you don't do a take two by repeating the exact same setup as the first one. We're already on shaky ground with the scene as it is, as Megumin wakes up to Kazuma being about as creepy as physically possible in a way that is reminiscent of his panty-snatching hand. While I am laughing my ass off, it does still take points away from what is already the least likable character in this film so far. Fortunately, he does say that this was a joke and that he had only taken her hand because his was cold, But unfortunately, this leads to an argument between the two that he blows what little credibility he had left by demanding that Megumin thank him for everything he's done for her. Just like a true gentleman would. However, instead of calling him out and saying that Cosmo is full of shit, Megumin instead just does it. Like, seriously. Without a shred of contempt or sarcasm, she shows him genuine love and gratitude for taking her in when no one else would and accepting her despite her many, many faults. In the hands of lesser writers or actors, this would have been way out of character for her, but Rie Takahashi just sells it, showing just how much she really appreciates him even in his worst moments. The effect this has on Cosmo is profound too, since he immediately starts trying to deflect most of that praise since he feels it's unearned, and instead tries to praise her just as sincerely as she did to him. It's a really touching moment. Knowing about how their relationship ends up in later volumes, I'm of two minds of this. On the one hand, I like that they were hinting at their future relationship with the obvious shipping bait paying service to this. But on the other hand, it seems to be setting up a precedent for ending the series on this movie, which is concerning since there's still a good 70% of the story left to adapt, and there's already enough anime that blew their load way too early as it is. I hope I'm wrong about this, but considering the rumors about Season 3, I don't really hold much hope. Unfortunately, this will have to wait, as Kazuma immediately ruins the scene by revealing that he used ice magic to freeze the window to prevent Megumin from running away again, and to force her to be more physical with him. Once again, Megumin subverts the audience expectation by not hurling him through the nearest wall, but instead calling his bluff and taking control of the scene by unambiguously trying to seduce him. This time, to his credit, Kazuma hesitates before acting on this invitation because he's not dumb enough to fall for the same trick again twice. But they end up being interrupted by the village alarm, so we never find out if this really was a trick to begin with. Kazuma, of course, is apoplectic at being interrupted before anything could happen, but when it turns out to be Sylvia coming for his head, he quickly changes his tune. He does try to attack her, but since she has sussed out his true identity, she was able to block it completely without giving two shits of a rat's ass. She then declares her intention to kidnap Kazuma and use him as a hostage, and Kazuma, paragon of right and chivalry that he is, goes along with her because she has big boobs. Now that would be bad enough, but then he decides to throw all likability straight out the window by immediately deciding to berate his teammates and demand that they show him the same appreciation that Sylvia does, which I imagine by this point takes his reprehensible act into double figures into Phil by this point. While she has Kazuma tied to her front, Sylvia reveals that, while she identifies as being female, she was originally a male and therefore still has male genitalia. Kazuma hears this and immediately loses his shit at the thought of her penis pressing up against him. Now, while I'm not averse to trap humor in principle, I do have to admit this joke takes it a little too far, especially for a series that never decided to make fun of such stereotypes before. While this is all true, I also have to concede that this was the only logical recourse that the writers could have done for this scene. I'm not saying this sort of thing is okay, I'm just saying they kind of wrote themselves into a corner here. Coming off from Kazuma's biggest jerk moment in a movie full of big jerk moments, if he were to be accepting of Sylvia from the start, that would mean he would have gotten off from this without punishment. At least in my case, how much I'm willing to tolerate a given character's jerkishness is directly proportional to how much they're punished for it, and without this admittedly awful joke, not having it would have set up a much more dangerous precedent in the long run. Personally, I would have just cut this whole scene altogether, but like I've said for the last 3 years, hindsight, much like the year we're all looking forward to, is 2020. Now, in case you haven't picked it up already, this is where the film kind of loses it. Sylvia runs off with Kazuma and takes him to a vault where the Crimson Demons keep a super weapon called the Mage Killer, which has the power to negate all magical spells. Kinda makes you wonder why a village full of powerful mages has such a weapon, but whatever. Kazuma lets slip that he knows how to unlock the vault by using the Konami code. Seriously, what the fuck is up with that? Kazuma does get revenge on her by locking her up in the vault. The rest of the gang then catch up with them and start setting up flag after flag despite Kazuma's protests. This is literally the last Konosuba signature for the rest of the movie, and we haven't even started the climactic battle yet. Fortunately, we don't have to wait for very long, as Sylvia then destroys the whole building as she is merged with the mage killer due to her powers as a chimera. With ultimate power, she then goes on a rampage into Crimson Demon's village, destroying almost everything in sight. When the Crimson Demons attempt to fight back, she then places an anti-casting field over the area, preventing any of them from using their magic abilities. Keep this in mind because I'll be bringing it up again later. After their initial attack fails, the Crimson Demons then tell Kazuma's group that there are an old set of runes which detail the weaknesses of the mage killer, but it's written in a code that they haven't been able to decipher. Kazuma, Aqua, and Megumin then head off for these runes, while Darkness separates from the group to protect Megumin's family as they are established to be in danger from Sylvia's attack. When the group arrives, they discover that the runes were simply written in Japanese and were, surprise surprise, made by the same loon that created the Destroyer Fortress. He then goes on to explain how he created the Crimson Demons, a fact that Kazuma keeps Megumin from hearing due to it being incredibly lame and somewhat insulting. Well, that was nice of him, at least. The dude then writes that the Crimson Demons were in fact worried about the mage killer he created, so he decided to placate them by creating a Chekhov's gun in order to destroy it if necessary. Going back to Sylvia for a moment, she's closing in on the retreating Crimson Demon forces and is about to kill a few of the characters we met earlier, but she is stopped by a rock slide that ends up killing most of her reinforcements. Said rock slide was caused by Union, who used a light spear spell to sever a part of the cliffside. Remember that there's supposed to be an anti-casting field over the area, which is why none of the Crimson Demons were fighting back. Either the field was only temporary and is now worn off, or Union is somehow powerful enough to bypass it completely. Neither option is exceptional here because we've already established that there are several Crimson Demons in the village who are already more powerful than her, so they should be on the verge of fighting back as well. Well, anyway, Union then provokes Sylvia into chasing her and lures her away from the other Crimson Demons and into a trap set by Kazuma's group using Chekhov's gun. Unfortunately, the gun is out of ammo, so instead Megumin decides to blow it away with her explosion magic. I'm willing to hand-wave Union since we didn't really know enough about her to know one way or another, but Megumin sure as Sangan isn't powerful enough to get through Sylvia's anti-casting field. Well, the point is moot anyway, since her explosion ends up getting absorbed into the gun instead, meaning that Plan A is back on. Humorously, Megumin's little sister Komeko steals the show by pulling the trigger before Kazuma can, taking the credit for killing Sylvia in a dramatic explosion that she's of course too cool to look at. Sylvia, having been killed, is now shown standing on the same riverbank we saw in earlier episodes where Verida and Hans, the two demon generals who were killed previously in the series, are waiting for her on the other side. They then grab her and drag her under the water while she keeps crying out that she doesn't want to die. Well, that's frankly terrifying now that I think about it. Again, I didn't think I'd be pitying the villain more than the main character, but here we are. Fortunately, or rather unfortunately I guess, this desire to live was apparently strong enough for her to come back to life and revive herself after merging with both Verida and Hans into a giant armored slime centaur thing. What? First of all, how? Second, why? And third, this is the stupidest, bullshittiest thing I've ever seen in terms of crowbarring conflict into anime for no good reason, but when you get something like this, an unholy combination of three bosses who each proved nearly insurmountable on their own, I don't give a flying fuck how it happened. I am loving every second of it, and I just want to see how this turns out. Regardless, now that she's more powerful than ever, Sylvie goes on to say that her near-death experience, or rather her death experience I guess I should say, has left her with a new appreciation for life, and she now desires to have what she'd never been able to attain before, which apparently was true love, I guess. She is indeed more than anyone else can handle and is just about to kill Kazuma and his group, but fortunately Wiz and Vanir show up to save them. They were apparently nearby in order to recruit a craftsman in the area to help recreate Kazuma's Japanese technology, but found the place being destroyed, so they decided to step in. Vanier reads Kazuma's mind in order to gain the full story, something which was established in the last season that he can't do, but frankly I just gotta pick my battles here. He and Wiz then team up to face Sylvia and her new allies, who call them out for being traitors to the Devil King's army, leading to an amazing 3-on-2 battle between 5 out of 8 demon generals. Wiz and Vanier put up a good fight, but even they are unable to leave even a scratch on Sylvia's new body. Meanwhile, Kazuma comes up with a plan to defeat Sylvia, which coincidentally and amusingly combines ideas from how he defeated all of the other great demon generals before. Darkness manages to catch Sylvia's attention and manages to go toe-to-toe with her for a while before Verida recognizes that she is temporarily merged with Vanier, referencing how he was ultimately defeated. Kazuma then walks up to Sylvia and offers himself to her as a lover and gets absorbed into her body, similar to how Hans absorbed him while falling into his trap. While this is going on, Wiz is occupied with absorbing the magic power of the Crimson Demons, referencing how Verida was defeated by the entire town's efforts. Wiz then transfers this energy to Megumin and Union, much like Kazuma did to finish off the Destroyer Fortress. And finally, Megumin and Union combine their most powerful spells, Explosion and Light of Saber respectively, into a powerful explosive beam of energy that pierces Sylvia's and Kazuma's chest, accomplished by the latter reducing their defenses and referencing how the former was originally killed. This destroys Sylvia for good this time, and she is able to pass on peacefully, having found true love in Kazuma. For his part, the only reason that enough of Kazuma survived so that he could be revived was because Aqua had used her blessing skill to max out his already high luck stat. So, that's 4 of the generals defeated, well 5 if you count Wiz, and Kazuma is welcomed back to Axel as a hero. Later, their party is enjoying some downtime by having a picnic, but before they can begin, Megumin has a favor to ask him. No, not that kind of favor, this is still Konosuba. She wants to be able to learn advanced magic so that she's no longer a burden to him, but can't quite bring up the nerve to do it herself, so she gives her adventurer card to Kazuma so he can do it for her. She also says she's going to give up explosion magic as a result. He appears to do so, but afterwards he asks her to fire off one last explosion for him. She does so as a last tribute to the spell she'd loved so much, but as she does, she discovers that Kazuma had instead used her experience points to power up her explosion instead, reigniting her love for the spell. While this is a sweet scene and shows a lot of character growth for both of them, I do have to point out that it would have been a lot better in the long run if they decided to compromise instead. They could have kept her learning more advanced magic, but if he'd instead made her promise not to give up explosion magic in addition to this, that would have been a lot more touching, as it would have shown that he was willing to respect her decision while also explaining in no uncertain terms just how much he appreciates her as a person. Megumin wouldn't be Megumin if she didn't fire off explosions whenever she could, but if she really applied herself to being more versatile, she could have easily become a much more of a hero in their party. Though that would have given them even more of a reason not to continue with the series, so perhaps it is a better move after all. And yes, I am aware that this is how it went down to the light novel, but that's just how Konosuba works. You're always looking for ways that you would have done better if you were in his position. Well, that's my thoughts on the movie as a whole. You're free to disagree with me on this, but I couldn't quite hate the movie. For all of its faults, it was still a visually pleasing movie with some excellent sound design, good character growth in places, and gave a focus to what was already my favorite character in the series. Again, there wasn't Konosuba in the end, and there were a few issues concerning the message it had, but I feel like the film as a whole was fine if we can look at it in a vacuum. I will say I do appreciate if you stuck through with this video for so long, since it ended up being much longer than I expected. But as it turns out, I had a lot to say about this movie. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, don't get run over. I'll see you guys later.